and Liberty. Sponsored by the LaHood Norton Law Group. And now, your objection sustained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney, Nico LaHood.
1200 WOAI. This is Sidebar. We're on every Saturday from 9 to 10 on 1200 WOAI, but you can also find us by going to sidebartv.com, and you can watch the stream on Facebook Live or on YouTube. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing today?
You sure you mean gentleman?
Gentleman, Kingsman, former Bexar County DA.
Wow.
Former Bexar County DA Nico LaHood, trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group, and also George Araujo, scholar, former chemist and pharmaceutical researcher and director. You guys, either you've been busy or you've been ignoring me. No, I've been busy all week. And I haven't really talked to you guys. And I'm imagining that you probably, like me, have watched Devin Archer just about on every single podcast and show that you can possibly imagine. I was just asking George before, why is this guy talking all of this sudden? Is he still friends with Hunter Biden? I mean, is he just trying to clear his name? But the things that he said about the relationship between Hunter and Joe Biden and Burisma and all of the different money-making, I don't want to say schemes because I don't have anything to back it, but it seems that he should be hiding instead of yapping.
Yeah, I haven't seen him on any podcasts. I see that the blips come up. You know, we've had a kind of a...
He was on Tucker.
Oh, I saw that,
Yes,
but I didn't
yes,
watch it, though.
yeah.
There's a part 1 and part 2 that
Yes.
I'm
I
curious
watched part
about it.
1, yes.
Is it worth watching?
It's interesting. That's why I asked that.
Yeah.
Why is he talking all of this?
I it's hard to... My pop taught me something. He taught me a lot of things. One of the things he taught me about people's behavior and motives is why does anybody do anything? Crazy
That's
trying to figure
true.
it
That's
out.
true.
Now, ironically, in the justice system, we have to look at people's motives because it's not often part of the elements of a crime, but the mens rea is, right? The mental intent. Is it intentional and knowingly? Is it reckless? Is it criminal negligence? Is it negligence? Are you liable in a civil case? Are you held accountable in a criminal case? So we have to get into people's minds, and they usually have evidence that can either support that or contradict that. So I don't know why he's doing it. I haven't heard his interviews. I can't believe someone hasn't asked him. If you say he's on all these interviews, Tucker's usually pretty good at asking questions. Have you heard that part yet? No?
No, I've not. It's a great question.
That would be the question I'd ask first.
It's a great question.
Why are you here?
I don't know that there's an answer from Devin Archer.
Because he's supposed to turn himself in. I guess he's got a sentence he's supposed to do. And there was some criticism this week that the DOJ sent a letter to the judge requesting and asking him to turn himself in. And they took a lot of heat from that, from what I understand, because they're like, okay, right before he's supposed to testify in front of this committee, you want him to turn himself in now? And then, of course, they backtracked off that. Typical, but... So I don't know why nobody's asking that question.
He's not the only associate of Hunter Biden that's that's come forth. The original was Tony Bobulinski. You remember that name? And we don't really know either why Bobulinski came forward.
Is he related to Joey Mamaluke? No. Oh, sorry. Couldn't help it.
Stop it.
Go ahead.
Maybe.
Go ahead.
Anything's possible. We're talking about Hunter Biden here.
Go ahead.
Man.
Sorry.
So, no, I don't know if there's an official reason why he's coming forward. These guys are on. Look, James Comer, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, has done a pretty thorough job. Talk about the antithesis to the so-called J6 investigation committee, the kangaroo court that was run by Democrats prior to Comer coming on board. This is the exact antithesis. They're being very methodical. There's a lot of documentation, names, places. In this case, amounts of money. So is it because Devin Archer has had an attack of conscience, or is it because he's seeing some sort of handwriting on the wall? Although Congress has no police arm, I mean, all they can do is investigate. And I think that's what you're trying to do, Nico, right? I mean, they're trying to make it very clear here who did the wrongdoing, when did they do it, to what extent. And they're putting all this information out there, and this is really ultimately going to be, there's crimes committed, but ultimately there's a political election in the fray here, and they're going to leave it up to voters. They're putting all the information out there and let the voters make make the right choice here in terms of whether Biden really should be kicked out of office.
Well, I think we're seeing, ironically, that this committee, and again, this is not a partisan issue. This is what the DOJ should have been doing. I mean, really looking into things, doing a thorough investigation. When you investigate things, you, as we say, you turn over every rock. You have to anticipate the counter argument, anticipate the defense. I'll never forget, an investigator years ago taught me something. I was a defense attorney. It was before I was district attorney, and he was a DA investigator. And we were talking about cases or whatever, and he says, Nico, when I'm investigating a case, I look for the innocents. Because if I'm actively looking for first of all, it's a great position to take from a moral perspective, because the DA's office, any prosecutorial branch in general, should be ensuring justice is done. Yeah. Right? They're not there to convict people. They're there to ensure justice is done. That means if a law enforcement agency has overstepped, you don't prosecute. If they've overcharged, you make sure they charge properly. If they've undercharged, you make sure you charge properly. You dismiss the case, you prosecute, you seek for the max, you seek for some type of reconciliation with community, with some community supervision. Did you get it right? So that's a good mindset for an investigator or a prosecutorial investigator to have. And he says, if I can't find the innocents, well, then they must be guilty, because I'm really looking for it. And I'm looking for it for twofold. Number one, are they really innocent? I mean, are we pointing the finger at the right person? But number two, I want to anticipate the counter argument. I have to hand over my investigation to the prosecutors I work with, and I want them to already kind of know, they can think for themselves, obviously, but I just thought that's a really good mindset to have. And it's important for all prosecutors. That's a lot of authority, or law enforcement agents or agencies, to have that mindset. I mean, because you can start that snowball quick. I mean, we're talking in general now, not just about Hunter or anybody else or Trump, but it's a big snowball that gets going once you starting an idea, and then you start following it. Then you have confirmation bias sometimes, and you start finding things that really aren't there.
I guess I get really confused, because when we talk about the speed of things happening, there is none of that when it comes to Hunter Biden. It's been years since everybody knew about the laptop that believed it back then, until the actual laptop appeared. But how quickly things happened for Donald Trump, because he was indicted again and again and again. And this week we heard about it again. And so that seems to go so quickly. And so there does seem to be a difference in how things happen.
And that's an objective observation, George. You and I have talked about this. When people, look, see, here's the problem with tribalism. That you defend your tribe, your side, no matter what. I mean, I can't stand that crap. I really can't stand that. I mean, we've got to look at truth. Truth has to matter. Winston Churchill said a lot of great things. One of the things he said is the most valuable thing in the world is the truth. We have to be truth seekers and pursue truth. I always say, as a follower of Christ, I'm a truth scavenger. I'm looking for it. I mean, if it's not in front of me and it doesn't seem obvious, I want to look for it, because sometimes the truth is hidden behind a barrier of lies, right? Because it's so valuable. And so we have to be looking for truth. And that's not happening right now. We've got to call balls and strikes, as like I say. And if your quote unquote side is wrong, call it out. Doesn't mean you're going to change your ideology per se, but we've got to get away from this tribalistic mindset where my side's right and you're the enemy and you're evil, and here's the equal, I hate you. And I think that's tearing our society apart.
But we're dealing with the other side of that quote these days. He also said that men occasionally stumble over the truth, but in many cases they just simply brush themselves off and walk off as if nothing had happened.
That's right.
And that's really kind of where we are today. We have an enormous capacity for self-delusion. And I just got to continue to give credit to James Comer, because we can't afford to blow off what has happened here. There really is smoking gun evidence. Devin Archer came and testified in a closed doors meeting, but Comer released the transcript of that on Thursday. And he came forth, and what we see here is a sort of piecemeal corroboration, not just between Devin Archer, but between the IRS agents. There's FBI agents that are corroborating these claims, and there's also an investigation. This, to your point, Karen, this didn't just start right now. This investigation has actually started during the time from when William Barr was in office. Because remember, when did Joe Biden sit there and say that he was going to withhold $1 billion? Right?
That's a big deal.
When he told the Ukrainian president, I think that was wasn't that 2014, 2015? Yeah. He told the Ukrainian president he was going to withhold $1 billion of aid if they didn't fire or remove Viktor Shokin, who was a prosecutor looking into Burisma for corruption, a company that Hunter Biden was sitting on a board making $80,000 a month. This is all corroborated. And there's video evidence of it. So Bill Barr ultimately started this, if you think about it. What did he do? He forwarded this to U.S. Attorney General in Pennsylvania, who then forwarded it to the U.S. Attorney General in Delaware, David Weiss. You've seen his name come up, where ultimately it went to die. Nothing ever happened. Why? Why was there no special counsel? Because this was found to be legitimate in Pennsylvania and forwarded to Delaware. This has all come out as a result of these investigations. And what we're seeing is that there's a pattern of not following up. And I wish I could just blame Democrats. I wish I could just blame Merrick Garland. But it really goes back to William Barr. I take nothing that man says with any seriousness. Every time he comes out there and makes a statement about Trump, this man completely fell down on his job. He should have followed up, and he didn't. It started with him, but this goes back years, and the evidence is truly smoking gun evidence. Look, $10 million, Nico. This isn't a guess. That's been confirmed. $5 million for Joe, $5 million for Hunter.
Well, the forensic accounting is going to be interesting. George is right about this. Devin Archer testimony apparently is when you put a conspiracy together, it's not you usually don't have a smoking gun. Definitely at the beginning, the smoking gun becomes clearer as you put the pieces of the puzzle together, and they have to connect them. And you don't try to fit a circle in a square. That's where that tribalistic mindset comes in when you prosecute a person instead of a crime. In our justice system, for it to work, we prosecute crimes that lead us to people. You don't prosecute a person and hope to find a crime. And that's where this tribalistic mindset comes in. So you're right. So Archer's testimony apparently is putting these pieces together. He's talking about these phone calls. Hunter's at a business. I mean, I try not to get snarky or condescending like some of these other people get, because it's not funny when you really think about this. Look, Hunter Biden, with all due respect, doesn't have a lot of talent. I mean, he's not a good painter, but he sells his paintings because of who his daddy is and all that. Okay, whatever.
He's talented at taking selfies.
Well, I don't even know about that. Depends if you like those talents.
He's a talented bagman is what he is, a talented middleman.
I'm talking about legitimate talents. Okay, so he's not talented. So you have to ask yourself, because I've heard people say, show me one bit of evidence where Joe Biden is connected to this. Well, then you have to ask, did Joe really think that his son belongs on that board of Burisma? What did he think he was doing? What training did he have to be on that board? Now, he could say, hey, okay, it's because of who I am, but did he know that there was a quid pro quo, and where was Joe's piece in that, if it was there, right? And can they connect that? Archer brings a little bit of a piece to that when you connect all the things that George says. I know we'll talk about it later.
Okay, remember, we are on air on WOAI 1200, WOAI from 9 to 10, but you can go to sidebartv.com, and that's where you can watch the stream on YouTube or Facebook Live. We'll be right back.
With reputations as respected high-level prosecutors in Bexar County, the attorneys of LaHood Norton Law Group bring in...
WOAI, this is Sidebar. One thing I hate about my brain is that there is a process that always tries to simplify everything so that I can understand it the way I would come into something not knowing anything about it so that I can explain it to my children. And the one thing that I hate is that when I look at people like Joe Biden, but Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, Jack Smith, I'm like, these people, actors couldn't be picked to just, I guess, amplify the characters that they are. You see to yourself, yeah, this looks like some kind of weird spy movie. But you look at these people and you're like, Devon Archer, the kind of like preppy, laugh out loud kind of guy. Hunter Biden, creep. And then even Jack Smith with these like dark circles under his eyes, and you're like, he has bad guy written all over his face. And I don't like that, but it to me, it's true, because I look at people. Nico, you do that for a living. You look at people and you see their demeanor and their body language means a lot. And these guys, you can read them so easily.
Well, how they look in their demeanor and body language are two different things. I was at a legal conference, sorry, little side note, and this former prosecutor like us, who's a defense attorney now out of Houston, was saying that he was a prosecutor flying with his wife. They were in separate seats. And this guy sits next to him, all tatted up, neck tattoos, teardrops near his eyes. And he's looking at a prosecution file, and he's like, oh, crap, man, let me shut this real quick. And so he's sitting there. Well, one of the engines goes out. The right engine goes out, and the plane is actually tilted. He says, he said he was itting his pants. You know what I mean? Shh. And so he said that. And so he was super scared. His fiance at the time looks back at him, crying, thinking they're going to pass away. And he goes, I really thought we were going to die. It was very, very scary. And the guy with all the tats and the teardrops grabs his hand and goes, I got you, brother. Let's pray. And they prayed. So right. They prayed. Yeah. I mean, he almost got emotional telling the story. And he said, I had to go up to him after. And I said, I am so sorry I judged you. And he goes, I gave my life to Christ in prison. I go around the country speaking. And he goes, he couldn't be a prosecutor after that. He stopped being a prosecutor. Now he's a defense attorney. Isn't that crazy? Wow. Now, it doesn't mean you have to stop being a prosecutor. Just bring a different perspective to your... But so I'm saying this, so I'm sorry for that side note, but I'm just saying the way people used to look at you with tattoos and all this crap and say like, oh, look at this guy, you know. But so now the demeanor, what they show you, what the Bible says, Jesus says you judge a tree by its fruit. And when you look at Jack Smith, he's 0 for 8 in the Supreme Court. We know that he has this reputation. Other commentators have said this is not Nico LaHood necessarily, is that he oversteps his boundaries, and he's been reversed many times, 0 for 8, in how he handles his discretion. And it's it's a really important position. I don't begrudge prosecutors. I begrudge prosecutors that abuse your authority. The Bible says, if much is given, much is to be expected. What a tremendous responsibility. I never took it lightly. I told the prosecutors, look, people are not a file. This is not just a bunch of paper. There's people behind this paper. There's a lot of people that get involved. There's kids, grandkids, there's family members, there's the individual, there's the community, there's the complainant, there's the accused. You've got to mash it all together, and you can't do it if you don't have some moral compass to help you navigate that. Sorry, George.
No, I mean, Nico stole my thunder, but that's exactly, I think, where we ought to just kind of plan ourselves for a few minutes. I couldn't care less what Jack Smith's opinion is. Politically, he has a right to those political opinions, but it's very clear that those political opinions are informing his legal actions. I care about his conduct. And yeah, he's got a long history of case dismissals and judicial rebukes. And it's not just domestically, it's internationally as well. He's worked overseas. And so he's got a long history of that. And so I think we need to look at that. We can't just sort of dismiss it. But it's not just that. It's the way he's conducting himself now. I mean, his charges, I just can't let this go as I think about it, Karen. There's a pattern here. His charges arrived one day. So this third indictment, one day after Devon Archer speaks with the House Oversight Committee and basically blows apart what Joe Biden has said, that he's never had any knowledge of Hunter's business dealings, that he's never met any of Hunter's business partners. Devon Archer basically came forward and said that these are categorically false claims. So he called Joe Biden basically a liar. So the Biden White House is feeling enormous heat. And so what do you get? Well, guess what? You get a drop of new charges against Trump. But it isn't just that. Remember, on June 7th, we had brand new documents that showed that a Ukrainian gas company, Burisma, had paid Joe and Hunter $5 million each. We didn't pull that out of our butts. There are documents attesting to that. On June 8th, the Department of Justice, or should I call it the Department of Obstruction of Justice, indicted Trump for the Mar-a-Lago documents case. So we see a pattern, again, of Biden feeling the heat, new charges against Trump. July 26th, Hunter's plea deal, plea agreement unraveled. Remember that?
Falls apart.
And then on July 27th, miraculously, Smith comes forward and announces superseding
but it's not
Mar-a-Lago charges.
It's not miraculously. They had to have been in the pipe already, ready to go. I mean, you don't just draft these things.
I understand, but it's the timing of the drop in the announcement.
Fair enough.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just the timing of the announcement seems to miraculously or statistically
Look,
probably
it's a fair question.
align
How convenient.
with the amount of heat that the Biden White House is feeling. And they're going to continue to feel this heat because there's legitimate smoking gun evidence here that Joe Biden is compromised. He's compromised at least to the tune of $5 million from a Ukrainian company. And Comer has records to the tune of $30 to $40 million of Biden family earnings through at least 20 shell companies. They have records of at least 6 banks, Nico, that claim that some 170 suspicious transfers of money have occurred. All of them tying to Biden business activities.
Anybody else would.
This is everywhere.
Anybody else would have been in a pickle, in the process of defending themselves by now. To George's point, I mean, it's not any one thing. It's these IRS whistleblowers, people that you wouldn't think say what they said. We've talked about them a few weeks ago. You have these payments, alleged payments. They're looking. I'm assuming they're going to do a forensic accounting. You have co-conspirators. You have Archer. You have the other guy, Mama Luke or Babalinsky, whatever his name is, and you have all these other people saying things. And just because they say something, it has to be corroborated. And then you have this apparent corroborating evidence. And so it's like I said, you're piecing these things together. People used to say, Schiff and all them used to say the walls are closing in on Trump. You know what it sounds? I mean, you get the feeling that the walls are closing in on Biden, to where even the news media, the mainstream news media, are starting to say, well, maybe he's not the guy. He's not likable. And they're talking about things that they never talked about before. And so it's interesting to watch. And for me, as someone who's been intricately involved in the justice system on both sides of it, and I've been advocating this from the day one of this show, Lady Justice has to keep her blindfold on. I'm telling you, if we keep going down this path, because we're already on the path, if we keep going down this path, this country is really doomed. And I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm just telling you, because then now it becomes a battle for power, which is what communism is. Because with that power, you have the authority to punish your opponents. And that's what happens. It's like, well, crap, I don't want to take this from these people. I'm going to get to power any way I can so I can punish my opponents, which George and I talked briefly about this. We didn't get a chance to dive into it, which I think Trump's statements were extremely irresponsible to say, hey, wait until we're getting charged because now we're going to get them type. George has the comment, I'm sure. You can't do this tit for tat. You don't fight darkness with more darkness. You fight darkness with light, evil with good. Doesn't mean that you're a pacifist. Doesn't mean you're a doormat. You got to be bold and strong. Jesus threw tables in the temple, whipped people with bull hair. I mean, he wasn't a wussy and a pansy. So I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying you can't do the same thing you're complaining about to the other person. You got to be because it doesn't end. George made that comment during the week. It just doesn't end, because then then I want to be in charge. I'm going to get you back. Well, yeah, I'm going to get in charge. I'm going to get you back. And then what are we doing?
And I would qualify that a little bit. These guys will break the law to go after their political opponents. Trump should absolutely go after them, but not break the law. He's going after them on legitimate issues, and that's totally acceptable. He should have clarified.
But that wasn't said in the statement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when Trump said in 2024, it'll be our turn. It'll be your turn to do what?
Yeah.
So elaborate on that. You don't want to do exactly what these scumbags are doing. You don't want to break the law. Right. You don't want to ignore the Constitution.
Right.
You don't want to criminalize political differences. But you should absolutely go after these guys for illegalities. These guys have tossed the Constitution. Jack Smith is indeed, and I think Trump hasn't pegged right. He's an absolute thug. He is. And somebody needs to stop this guy. I mean, some judge, and I believe ultimately, you and I were talking about, where is this going to go, Nico? Because we know that the judge that presides over this locally.
You mean legally stop him?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy that you have to say stupid crap like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking in a legal context.
I know.
He's a legal thug, is what I mean. I'm not saying he's a WWE thug. Maybe he is. Maybe he has an alternative life. Who knows?
Yeah.
In fact, he's got all those dark circles, Karen.
Yeah.
Who knows?
He does.
Maybe he's
He
doing
looks
that
like a
late night.
criminal.
So Yeah, I think he's a legal thug. He's basically tossed the Constitution. He's going after a former president of the United States for non-crimes. I mean, this all started with Alvin Bragg, as you know. We talked about that in here, escalating really state-level charges to federal-level charges because Trump made a nuisance claim go away as a businessman. Do I believe that's going to get tossed? I do. Do I believe it's going to get tossed in D.C.? I don't. Or in Manhattan.
Indictment? Are you talking about his latest indictment? Or?
No, I'm just starting with indictment 1, Alvin Bragg. Again, going after, there's a pattern of going after a former president for non-crimes and not thinking about the implications of that, right? And now we have, and then we have him, Smith going after Trump for the non-crime of basically having a former office of president retaining classified documents, and there's a really good legal theory out there that says the president can declassify documents at will, but for him to escalate that to a federal crime, right? I mean, and now this to indict Trump because he what? Because he decided to call BS on an election that he firmly believed was.
Well, yeah, now you
I know I'm getting into mens rea.
That's important. That's an important distinction on this new indictment. I mean, the selective prosecution on the classified documents is the argument people make. It's not whether you should have them or not. It's why him? This is the tribalistic mindset I'm talking about. We know every president has had documents, but then he should have turned them back and all this. I mean, that case to me is ridiculous. The thing that I think their strongest case is in Florida with that video. That's the strongest case. And if you're being a strategist, you focus all your attention on that one. That one you have them on audio saying, well, now here's the defense. I get it. We don't know if that was Trump being Trump. Was it just pieces of paper? Where are those papers? Those papers were never found in their search. So it was just Trump.
But there you have it. If that's their strongest defense, that gives you a sense of what we're dealing with here.
You mean their strongest attack? Or you mean their strongest defense for Trump?
Yeah, the strongest attack. I was thinking about it from Smith's perspective. But yeah, if that's their strongest, that gives you a sense of what we're dealing with here. But now this indictment, really, so going after Trump for basically calling bull on the results of an election that Trump obviously believed was bull. So you're going to go after
him? We should talk about that.
On First Amendment grounds?
Yeah, that's challenging.
Okay, we're going to come right back with more on Sidebar. yeah. Remember, go to sidebartv.com. That's where you can find us live after the show,
My
please.
mic on? Look at
Yes,
what
it
Clyde
is.
says. I love this show. I finally get to see you live.
Ooh.
Thank you, Clyde. And thank you
Wow.
for watching. And thank you for sharing. And anybody out there that says, I want conversations like this to continue, please go to sidebartv.com and you can become a sponsor. Why do we need to continue this? Nico, I forgot. I was going to call him something else.
You're going to get bleeped out. You call me what you're going to hurt. Be careful.
Why do you think we need to continue this type of conversations, Nico?
Well, you mean this type of the way we have on the show?
Sidebar.
Well, I think it's important. You know, we talk about critical thinking all the time, to think about the other side, to get outside your comfort zone, to consider things. Look, I mean, I think people know that where we lean. I mean, I'm a conservative-leaning person. Obviously, I'm a Christian. I'm a biblically-minded man. But that doesn't mean that I will not pursue truth, because as those principles that govern my life, professional, publicly, politically, and personal, I mean, that means that I should be pursuing, conforming to, and championing truth. And if the truth is against, quote unquote, my side, then I champion the truth, because I'm living by a standard that's outside myself or my shelf and my own agendas. And so I think we need to model conversations. We've been talking about having people on the show eventually that differ from us. I think that's important. I think to model conversation and disagreement. We can't go down this road of, if you disagree with someone, you hate them. And that's why I keep bringing up Bill Maher, that I like him. I don't agree with him on almost everything, but I like him, and I think he does well modeling conversations. You know, and I've actually seen him course correct a little bit.
Did you see Patrick David tell Joe Rogan? He says, when are you going to, I think he convinced him, when are you going to have Trump
Someone
on?
sent me, I haven't watched that. So with Salo, and by the way, welcome back, Salo and Dom. We missed you. Jeff did a great job while you were gone, but then welcome back. So Patrick Bet David was on Joe Rogan's show. I didn't watch the whole podcast, but they sent me the 15 or 14 minute clip. And he I think he did convince Joe Rogan
live on the air.
to have Trump.
That would be amazing.
On his
Has that ever happened to you or George? That you're very set on a topic and then you start hearing information, you're like, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, for me.
Well, do you remember the last time that happened to you, George?
It was probably this morning.
Like what breakfast?
I don't eat breakfast, but I mean, I mean, it was probably this. I mean, look, I'm going to stop learning when I stand before the Lord. I mean, I don't care if I'm a quote unquote expert in an area or not. And I always tell people I'm great at what I'm great at, I'm good at what I'm good at, and I suck at what I suck at, and I know what I suck at. And so I'm trying to better that area, but I'm always opening to learning.
Yeah.
I have not arrived. Yeah. And so we just have to have that humility when we
You know what somebody said yesterday and made me think? He says, people need to stop thinking that the big guy that Hunter Biden said, it's not his dad, it was Obama. He said, the big guy.
Now that's just a complete theory.
Yeah, I know. It's
speculation.
But a lot of other stuff is going to make sense with it.
But
anyway.
there's no evidence of that. That's where I think we need to calm down. Look, Sidney Powell lost all credibility because she was talking about her Kraken, and she was smoking her Kraken while she was saying it.
And got us all excited for nothing.
Stupid. We said it back then, George. That it was overselling.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
put up or shut up, and she never put up. I just think that if you're a believer, if you're a Christian, and this guides our political opinions or our Christian faith. I hope I'm talking accurately. I'm sure I know I'm talking accurately for Nico as well when I say this. You have to ruthlessly pursue truth. And it's impossible to do that and not be willing to question even yourself, not be willing to disbelieve something or believe something. You always have to be open to new information. You can't pursue truth and kind of live in an intellectual silo. And so I'm hoping that people sense that from this show, that we're willing, because look, we are not carrying the water for Republicans on this show.
No,
We go after Republicans all the time.
Yeah.
We do. We go after them for crappy positions and for inconsistent positions. And we go after Democrats as well. We're equal opportunity offenders. Yeah. And so I think hopefully we're operating in the tradition of Jesus, because he was an equal opportunity offender too.
And Nico, you said a little while ago that you hate people that are very cultish, right? That it's I don't care. Tribalistic, okay. Is there an area where, because normally they would think that conservatives / Republicans are on the side, right? They're together, right? Is there an area where those conservative kind of hardcore Republicans have misrepresented something about Democrats? Like an idea that you're like, man, there's something that I agree with Democrats. Or we're missing
today's Democrat.
Yeah,
I'm really trying to think about what today's Democrat advocates for that I think that I would agree with.
That's safe.
Well, and I don't care about being safe.
Because today's Democrats really aren't Democrats.
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, and that's why Bobby Kennedy's getting so much flack. I mean, why he's not a Democrat? I mean, well, I mean, he really, when you listen to Clinton in '95 and Obama in '08 and Biden in over the 5-6 decades he's been around, and Schumer and Feinstein and Reid and all the old school quote unquote Democrats, include Kennedy and Johnson and everybody else. Bobby Kennedy sounds just like them. So who's the real Democrat? So has the Democrat Party changed? People say the party didn't leave me, or I didn't leave the party, it left me. Well, I think it's been hijacked. I don't use that. I never used that phrase when I walked away. It was hijacked. I mean, because you have this hostile takeover of the Democrat platform. Because I mean, look at I'm a data guy. Look at the platform today. Listen to the speeches. Look at the platform in the past. Listen to the speeches. Look at the legislation. Look at the legislation, because again, talk is cheap, and you can see these are different parties. I mean, this is not the same party, and I say that just objectively as an observer, as a critical thinker, as a person who pursues evidence and truth. So, yeah. So I can't think of a position that I know that the Democrat Party believed in the nuclear family in the past. Joe Biden's been on TV. I mean, all of them have been. Hillary Clinton in the floor of the Senate was defending the nuclear family. I know they had a very, very different position on abortion. It should be safe and rare. I mean, that was a position that they said. I knew they were big on border. I mean, Bill Clinton in 1995 said the greatest threat to this country is illegal immigration. No one says that today. So, I mean, I'm an observer. I'm just looking at these things, and something's changed. And so people need to identify that to know what they are.
You know, you say that you are truth scavengers, both of you, and I get that. So is Trump.
I don't know about that, but go ahead.
But he says the truth. When he says the truth, that's when everybody attacks him.
Sometimes he says the truth.
Okay,
yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Well, I mean, there's these people that think Trump
truth,
walking,
I guess.
they have Trump euphoria.
Yeah.
And I just don't have that. His policies, yes, I think benefited this country. I love his boldness. Every strength taken to an extreme, as George has said for years, is a weakness. And I think that what some people love about Trump is his weakness. I mean, you know, he's like every politician lies and they over-exaggerate and all this. And he's mastered it. He's a marketing genius. But he says some things that are true. There's no doubt about that. But he's in the boat with all of us. I mean, all of us are wrong. I think sometimes he knows he's lying. I mean, I call balls and strikes. Do I think he did a better job than Biden? Yes, I do. Do I think he's being unfairly treated? Just objectively, I think if you look at this without the lens of a tribal mindset, I think you have to say, look, he's not treated the same. I mean,
what's the biggest lie of Trump that frustrates you?
Well, I mean, start from vaccines to where he's at. I mean, a lot of things.
Maybe he didn't think that was a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Though.
Do you think it was a lie, or because
I think he's absolutely full of it. I think he's full of it. I think he knew exactly what he was doing.
You think he knew what he was doing in regards to the vaccine?
I think he knew that he wasn't maybe sitting. My opinion. You don't come in before he was president. I don't know how we got on this topic, but before he was president, he questioned vaccines. He talked about it. He tweeted out on it. He had Bobby Kennedy. That was true. I was around there at that time. But he was going to put Bobby Kennedy on some type of review board. And then he goes dark on Bobby. And then he goes to this vaccine kind of euphoric, I'm the greatest of the and then won't course correct. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why he changed his position. I would like to see if they donate. I don't know.
Trump came in with a certain conviction about vaccines. That's absolutely true.
Questioning him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He had questions. Okay. He has some questions about some vaccines, but enough to make him wonder. And he was open about that. And so he came into office with question marks about that. And obviously he talked to people who have a diametrically different view than that. And so he apparently, in his view, was presented with different information and changed his mind. That is inherently not wrong. No, I think he's mistaken.
Yeah.
And I think he should have given Bobby Kennedy the time that he deserved, because Bobby Kennedy is probably the best apologist out there.
Yeah.
For what I think is just absolutely horrendous vaccine safety protocols in big pharma. There's no question about it. I think and Kennedy has been doing his research for years and has an excellent organization, children'shealthdefense.org. I think that's just fantastic research, and they write papers on it, on issues. They certainly did probably the best job in calling out the really what I call medical tyranny during the COVID era. So Trump should have availed himself a lot more of that view of the argument, and he didn't. He simply did not. And he was a fan of Fauci's in the beginning.
Yeah, he was.
And he was an apologist for that. Those are, I mean, this is a matter of public record, Salo. And you're hearing from a guy who's a fan of Trump. So on the issue of vaccines, I think Trump tripped and fell. And I think his best recoil from that is to exercise some humility. And I don't know if that's in him.
That's so true.
I don't know if that's in him.
so
And I
true.
think that's an Achilles heel. So on that issue, I part ways with 45. I do. Now, in terms of his political claims, I think he's been absolutely correct, generally speaking. I think in terms of the economic state of the country, he's been absolutely correct. In terms of, by mean political claims, I mean like in terms of corruption and how Washington operates and how it does a disservice to American citizens. On issues of immigration, unquestionably. On issues of foreign policy, on not tripping over ourselves to get into every meaningless war. I think Trump has been absolutely spot on. Talk about speaking truth to power, right? So I think on most issues, Trump speaks the truth. And I'm talking politically here, as a political figure, as a public figure. I don't want to get into his personal life. God knows there's been plenty of challenges there. But so in that regard, I think net, in terms of a truth-telling asset, Trump is a net positive. Joe Biden is a grotesquely net negative. The man champions lies. He floats on lies, and he's surrounded by people who help him do that. The Department of Justice has become really the Department of Obstruction of Justice, working for Joe Biden. This is what we have right now. That is the antithesis of Trump and the Trump White House. I do not believe at all that the Trump White House floated on that.
For me, anytime I hear someone that everything is tremendous, everything's the greatest, everything's this, everything's that, to me that's, and I'm not saying this about Trump, I'm just saying in my world, that those are characteristics of a con artist. I'm not saying Trump is. I'm just saying, because I mean, he's a marketer. So
he's a marketer,
I get that. But when I listen to his old videos from the Donahue and Oprah, he was much more, I mean, and even his detractors say, man, he made some sense back then. I don't know if he got too much into his marketing and he became kind of a circus show. And he bought into it. And he knows that the circus show got him to where he's at. So now that became his identity. I'm not trying to be a Dr. Phil. I'm just making my 2 cents is probably worth 2 cents. All I'm saying is you have this split when you watch this man. I mean, for me at least, I'm looking at the old him on these videos, and you're like, damn, he's articulate, makes sense. He's charming. He's got Barbara Wawas all over him, and Oprah, everybody's drooling over him, and he's funny, and he's this, and he's intriguing, and blah, blah, blah. And they're saying, you're going to run for president? Well, if I would win. And he was right. This is years ago. And then now he's different. And then you'll see him in some interviews where he seems a little, I don't know. He's just a funny bird to me.
But don't you think that as you get older, and my dad, I just spent 2 days with him. I still want him over Biden, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I spent a couple of days with my dad this week, and I have noticed that his filter has gotten way thinner. And so I'm thinking.
And they're more stubborn.
Yes.
And they're more direct.
And that, to me, it could possibly be that he's older and he's like, I don't give a crap anymore.
I don't care a lot of details.
We can talk about the net of both of them. I think George's analysis is good.
Biden
You just asked me off the fly, and
Yeah.
that's the first thing that came to my mind. But it shows a characteristic flaw that I think most politicians have, by the way.
I want to elaborate on that, if we can.
Please,
when we come
please.
back.
Right when we come back, we're going to go to that, and you got to remind me because in this 1 second, I'm going to forget.
What's your name again?
Yeah, we'll be right back with more on Sidebar. WOAI. Come on, Sala, quit laughing and give everybody where to go.
SidebarTV.com. You gotta check that website because everybody tells me. Somebody asked me a few minutes ago, "Hey, how can I find you guys?" Well, you can hear us, you can watch us, you can follow, like, share, brag about Sidebar TV and what these guys are doing, and on all platforms. And Twitter, man, we've been getting a lot of followers and people that are just following us on Twitter. So go to sidebartv.com. You can go to, what is it, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. So follow us on that and share it because we're on TikTok now. After the program, Georgia and Nico are going to be doing some dancing because that's what TikTok's about. We got to get some dancing videos. So, you know.
Viral
I don't know if I
dance.
can imagine George dancing.
But seriously, folks.
Oh, you used to dance. Nico used to be a salsa dancer.
I've seen
No, my wife she competed and said, I can hold on. So I have rhythm and I can hold on to my wife.
Okay, stop. That's crap. This guy's amazing.
I've seen the video.
Yeah, okay. I get that I'm not like a dancing extraordinary.
Fred Astaire.
No, I'm sorry. I've watched this guy dance many times.
Oh,
He
wow.
keeps up with his wife just fine.
I keep up with my wife. Yeah,
Okay, but you just said she's fantastic. So if you're keeping up with somebody who's fantastic,
First of all, you can't compete with that.
this guy's really good. There is a planet somewhere where I'm as good as that. It just happens to not
So
be this one.
Nico's hips don't lie.
Oh my
So
God.
tell me
have 4
about
kids.
Vivek. I've seen you change, Nico, about Vivek.
And
Oh, sorry, you were going to talk about Trump.
look, I
Yes.
just texted you guys my thoughts on
Don't forget
Vivek,
your
and we'll have to
thoughts.
say that for another show. I'm less than enthusiastic about Mr. Ramaswamy. On certain things where I think he's very strong. He wrote the important book Woke Inc., and that is a well-written book, and there's a lot of truth in it. And to that extent, I'm a big fan. But I think Vivek has some holes. And if he was under fire, if he was on a debate stage, a serious debate stage, not with 50,000 people with 0.00175% support, but a debate stage where you're down to 2 or 3 people and now you're down to the wire, he's going to get challenged on these things, and I think he'll falter. I don't think his comebacks from these things have been very
Well, here's a
effective.
question.
But
I mean,
we'll save that for another
Yeah,
time,
and maybe
unless
we'll talk
Nico
about
doesn't want to
this.
save it for another
No,
time.
it's okay. I mean, we'll talk about this after the show. If Trump wasn't in the race, who would you be supporting? I've never asked you that.
Well, I think I would probably have, if Trump wasn't in the race, I probably would have to support DeSantis. I'm not an enthusiastic DeSantis voter. I think he'll get chewed up. I do. Maybe for another show.
Yeah.
But
okay.
but
And let me tell you something in regards
all of the polling, including this ridiculous Reuters Ipsos poll that came out this morning and said 50% of Republicans would not vote for Trump if he was indicted or if he was
Convicted.
Excuse me. That sounds like one giant load of crap. Fox News has a habit of putting out these, again, speaking of miraculous timing, these polls, right when they think that Trump is most vulnerable, they just come down and kick a man while he's down. And they're usually bogus polls, I think. Somebody needs to check to see if they're likely voters or registered voters. I would be willing to bet they're registered voters. Look, every poll shows that with every indictment, with every pushback, with all the heat that he gets from Washington, Trump's numbers are just stratospheric. There was a poll that just came out recently. It said, oh my gosh, Trump is faltering in Iowa. Wasn't you just told me that this morning? On July 26th or 27th, the Hawkeye State came out with there was a poll from a national research firm, came out and put Trump 27 points ahead of DeSantis. It's a few days ago in Iowa. What changed? So I don't know. I'm a little. You got to be careful with polls right now to begin with.
It used
Really
to be
have be careful.
27 points. Now
It
he's
was 27
26.
points
He's
in Iowa, though,
falling.
specifically.
And
in Iowa.
I always, when you're talking about, okay, does it make sense? Can you reason this? And you always say that, which I totally agree. But then I started thinking, all of this stuff is not about reasoning. Because what you just said, if you're reasoning it, well, Trump shouldn't be ahead. And then you say, well, why is he doing this? Does this benefit Trump, him saying that or saying it this way? But it's benefiting him, and it doesn't even make sense.
Well, I've talked to George and Karen about this numerous times. If someone is advocating that a more conservative ideology will bless this country, then it doesn't matter what happens in the primary. It really happens in general, right? I mean, so if your horse wins your primary race, great. But are they going to win the world championship? And that's the presidency. So that's me. I'm a strategist. I'd like to think end result. You have to get. How are you going to get there? Yeah. I've had in trials, people said, man, I picked a great jury. I did a great voir dire. Man, did you see my opening statements? Yeah, I crossed the crap out of that witness. And I go and verdict guilty or whatever it is. If you're a prosecutor, not guilty. I mean, so it's a result. I guess I'm so much in a result-oriented profession that how do I get to that result, honorably, professionally, and then for me, morally? So,
Karen, this guy says, to your point, the older we get, the less time and patience we have for people's feelings on an array of topics. So what you were saying about numbers, check this out. Twitter is a very powerful platform, right? And that's why people hate Elon Musk, because he's just opening it to everybody. So since they started in January, these are the people that are running, right? Mike Pence, they're running, and they're tracking how many followers they're getting, right? So, for example, Mike Pence is the only candidate that lost followers from January till today. He's the only one. He went down -2%, right? Wow. And then Senator Tim Scott. But Vivek Ramaswamy, from January to today, he went up 392% followers.
Well, because he's putting himself out there. It's no
totally
different like Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah.
So Bobby Kennedy and Vivek are on every podcast that will take them.
He's doing what Trump was doing when he started the first time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but Vivek will go on left-leaning podcasts. He'll go in the heart of Chicago at a barbershop. I mean, Bobby goes on Fox. Bobby goes on The Hill. Bobby goes wherever. He'll take him. He'll go on Joe Rogan. And that's that's a good, to me, I've always been that way. You know, I did 16 town hall meetings. Really? And in the last quarter or whatever, or last year of being in office, I just thought it was important on all sides of town. And you got to go to people that you disagree with because they're still your constituents. So now, is that a smart move in each respective primary? Okay, open for a suggestion. Yeah. I mean, for debate. I understand that from a political position, but from a eyes and ears on you and raising your goodwill and your name identification, I mean, it's a great move.
Yeah. When you're Trump's position is when you're 60 points ahead, in some cases 65, 70 points ahead, right? And you've got 12 people, or whatever it is by now, I'm losing count, fighting over the scraps. Let them fight over the scraps. Why not?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What does Dom's shirt say? Perseverance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go after it. And good for Vivek.
Yeah.
Good for Vivek. Go after the 3%. Go after the 5%.
Yeah. But the way he's talking,
it'll get you on the debate stage.
And this is where I struggle because he's being very honest on what he believes in regards to wokeism, stuff like. He's being too honest. And I think because he's doing that, and they're going to find out what he believes in his stances, they're going to stop giving him platform pretty soon. Pretty soon they're going to be like, oh my goodness, this guy believes that? Stop. You know, we're not going to talk about
the non-conservative
traditional
platforms.
media.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Vivek. I don't know if you're thinking of world leaders like Xi Jinping and Putin, you know, squaring off. I mean, I'm too combat sport minded, MMA and boxing that I like and follow and train. You know, Vivek with that big smile and poofy hair, you know, talking all crazy. I mean, I don't know if that's what I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm happy to be wrong.
You're not. Christie, no.
I mean, well, look, Chris Christie, I mean, he's a little rougher dude. I mean, I don't care about his weight so much. But, I mean, if he's healthy. But he looks the part. But I just think he's such a angry person. Yeah, he's not a very nice person.
He's an opportunistic hack who's floating around 1%.
He can't float, but continue.
So I sent you guys a text just summarizing succinctly where I stand on Ramaswamy, and this is where I think he talks in generalities. He doesn't really delve down into particulars, and I think when he comes under that kind of scrutiny, if he comes under that kind of scrutiny, I think he's going to get pillaged, and to the extent he has, in some cases, he's been pushed back on. I don't think his responses are that compelling. And so I just mentioned a couple of examples here in my text. And these are questions I would ask him. I mean, he's come out and said he thinks it's a good idea to increase legal immigration. Why? The last thing we do right now is to be doing anything with regard to increasing any kind of immigration right now. Our immigration status is in absolute disarray. We simply can't keep track of the people that are in here illegally. And we're letting people in who are coming in legally on some really questionable criteria. So he says he thinks it's a good idea to have legal immigration. Why? I think it's nuts to take that position right now. He says we should have transgenders in the military.
Don't you think? Wow.
At some point, Salo, you have to stop the bleeding. But
don't you think that the illegal immigration is affecting the legal immigration? Don't you think, like, you're saying that because you're like, because illegal immigration is so bad, let's stop legal immigration too.
What I'm saying is that we have an identity crisis in the country. We do not know who we are. We don't know what we believe. American citizenship is irrelevant today. We have practically zero cohesion in this country because our own people don't know what it means to be an American. We have to go back to basics.
Like Vivek. I'm joking. Continue. Because that's the idea.
I know, but you can't. The problem is here. You got to stop the bleeding. You got to just stop. You got to circle the wagons. We have to get back to teaching what it means to be an American. We have to build consensus around those things. We have to the country has to fortify around, and then consider opening your gates to the 100 million people that are waiting outside to enter legally right now. So I think that the illegal immigration problem has made the legal immigration issue a problem.
Yes,
right now I do. If I was answering this question 5 years ago, I probably would say that very, very different. In fact, 5 years ago, even maybe 6 months ago, I might have said something very differently what I'm saying right now. But we have an absolute crisis, and what we need to do right now is simply stop
the bleeding. Yeah,
any and all immigration, in my view, except for individuals that we believe have a very real and immediate strategic benefit to the country. And that would be a handful of a handful of a handful.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but my point is, I think that when he talks about legal immigration, he's rather blasé about it. And he thinks it's a good idea generally. I would challenge him on that. Transgenders in the military, he thinks it's perfectly okay for that. Why? Why does he think that's a great idea?
Does he explain why his position on that? On the transgender in the military?
Well, I mean, I think he thinks it's a net, it's basically a net zero effect. It's a neutral effect. I think that's inaccurate. Okay, and he would reverse, I think, Trump's policies with regard to not having transgenderism in the military. Look, we let the camel's nose under the tent, and now the military is now actually subsidizing through taxpayer dollars trans procedures. My point is, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. We should understand that and not give an inch.
I agree.
Vivek seems to disregard that. You know, I think he's naive about it. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, I mean, I put that in my text. Why does he think that's a great idea? That obviously neuters and weakens America. It puts unbelievable pressures, unbelievable regulations on America in terms of its energy policy, but it's okay for China and India and other violators in terms of carbon emissions to continue doing what they're doing. So why is that okay? Look, check out my text. We should have a discussion on Vivek at some point.
Well, we'll finish this discussion maybe on the show, on the after show, as we wrap up. Let's start where we left off here on Vivek, I guess, and then some of the other candidates is important. I know some people had questions about the indictment. We really didn't get a chance to go into this new indictment and the constitutional implications of that, and why a lot of people think this is a weak indictment and it's very politically motivated. So those of you that are not going to listen past the radio show, thank you for tuning in.
Go to sidebartv.com and follow.
Go to what?
Sidebartv.com.
Sidebartv.com. Those who want to continue the conversation will be on live here shortly. God bless you. Have a great weekend.
Okay, where are we starting?
Well, I guess
Back to the candidate.
I was going to ask, we left off on Ramaswamy, but I was going to ask questions
About the indictment too, but I think George's points about Vivek are legitimate. I mean, the illegal immigration. I think so. Here, to let you guys finish. You guys were in the middle of your conversation. It sounds like Vivek, and I don't know, I have no idea, but from a strategic messaging point, he's saying, if you say I'm not for legal immigration, then that gets blown out of proportion. So when you say I'm for illegal immigration, that means I want to stop illegal immigration, and they're both affecting each other. I think it's a big umbrella that
He's
covers
promoting
both.
order. Let's do this orderly.
Now, how you get there is another story. Now, in promoting legal immigration, maybe he would take George's position of saying, stop, we got to figure out who's coming in the house first. That's like saying everybody and their mother is trespassing in your home. And I want people that I invite in the house to come in.
Yeah.
Well, you don't even know who's in the house, who you invited, who you didn't. You can't recognize
Especially
anybody.
now.
There's too many people here. So what you would do is everybody get out. Not that that would happen literally on the immigration issue. Stop everyone from coming in. Let me reorganize who's here and who I want to invite or not. It's like it's a nightclub. It's a nightclub example.
Well said.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
One
exactly
line
right.
of people that are on the VIP list, which are the people invited, and other people are just, so you got to organize it first.
This is dangerous because I believe what you're saying. At the point we're at, let's close the door and let's start again. But to make America better, I would even dare say, you know what? Let's go like a meritocracy kind of thing.
But
let's
Salo, there's
never closed the door though completely.
actually, we did. There's historical precedent for this
really?
in the 20s and the 30s, sure. And it wasn't until 1965 that Ted Kennedy, under his so-called leadership, that we decided it was a good idea to start opening the doors. And
what did it look like? What do you mean close the doors in the 20s? What did it
Well,
look
we
like?
had an influx of immigration at the turn of the century. I mean, Ellis Island, right? I mean, it was truly a flux, and you had immigration coming from a slew of countries, and I think at that point it makes sense to pull the plug, assess who's here.
Is that what they did?
Indeed, and how are we going to assimilate people in a way that maintains national integrity? And so I think that's reasonable. And that wasn't like a 2-year thing, Nico. I think that
Who made that happen? Was it a presidential decision? Was it?
yeah, I mean there was alignment on that through the three branches of government.
So then listen, nobody comes in. But now how does that work out?
Okay, when I say nobody, I'm being hyperbolic. I'm saying you want to talk about a very thin funnel. Let's put it that way. Relative to today, it was shutting off the spigot.
Do we know what the standards were? I'm really curious.
So
I
you
mean, I
had
have
to
no
have
idea.
somebody that sponsored you, and you had to have a
we should
way to
vote.
make a living, right? I mean, what?
Oh no, absolutely. You couldn't come in unless you had a way to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you needed to come in and you needed to be a net asset to the country. You couldn't be a burden on the country. You also had to check off criteria in terms of your willingness to embrace the character of the country. Our constitutional imperatives. I mean, even in my case, because I'm an immigrant, even in my case, I became an American citizen in August of 1986, shortly before I turned 18 as a minor. My parents, took them 9 years, and I wonder if they're listening today. But if they are, I mean, maybe they can chime in, unless I'm saying something inaccurate. I don't think I am. But from 1977 to 1986, they worked, they earned money, they contributed, they paid taxes, and they had to show that they were worthy of something called American citizenship. They had to take a test.
What a concept.
Yeah, what a concept. And so had I not come in as a minor with them, I would have had to do the same thing. Now that's from 1977 to that's in 1986.
But there was a process. They had some type of visa to come in.
Yes.
On a temporary basis.
True
to
enough.
establish themselves. We still have those laws in place, by the way. We're just not being followed as strictly or selectively or whatever. I don't do immigration law, but you're just saying go back to that exclusively and not. I mean, first of all, this crap at the border is insane. I mean, of course you would want that. You can't do that. And it's not happening up north on the Canadian border. It's happening down here. You just can't. And look, now that the problem is New York is being trounced. I mean, now that Eric Adams is talking, and now that it's visited them,
Right.
everybody's changing their
Yeah.
tune. It's not theory anymore. When the crocodile's at your front door, now what? Type deal. And so I agree with that. We've got to definitely shut off this.
Nico. It is truly a disaster. It's the only word that fits. In my view, the healthiest thing we ought to do is to literally stop the bleeding and evaluate the extent of the perfection of illegal immigration. And people who came here legally who have overstayed visas and should no longer be here. In my view, the only way that you can do that is to stop the fucking thing. And I mean, I feel, you hear the passion from me, and I'm sorry, but this is exactly how I feel. This is a serious thing. American citizenship is precious. Yes, we are on the verge, not just politically, but in terms of national identity, losing the country. I go back to your word, tribalism. That's where we are. Immigration exacerbates that today. It doesn't enhance cohesion. It actually fragments it. And we've never been this close to losing the country. And I think immigration is a net.
George, I think you're spot on about that in the sense that, we don't even know what we believe in this country. Young people don't understand basic foundations of the government, of what we stand for. National pride is the lowest.
That's one of the reasons, Nico, that I love Vivek. He's always talking about making the education, working with the education system and the media to bring back the young people to being proud of their nation. For example, Ray says, our American culture is being overshadowed. And what you were saying, George, Vinny says, you had to have skill, self-reliance, and be willing to assimilate to American values and standards.
Yeah, but how are they going to do that to the millions that are already here? There are no rules.
That's George's point.
Yeah, I think that's the point. We just simply can't walk and chew gum at the same time at this point.
Yeah.
I wish we could. We tried it. It didn't work. And in my view, I think that's the only responsible thing to do. Now, here's the problem. No politician's going to touch that because they're immediately racist.
Totally.
Right.
And that's my point. See, in America, there was a time when that kind of pushback would be considered totally absurd.
And that's why
But the idea that that's entertained today by the culture
Yeah.
tells you how far from American culture
Totally.
we have come.
That's why Vivek is being careful the way he says it. I'm like, yeah, let's do legal immigration
I
correctly.
know, but it's a
and-
cop-out.
But it's a cop out. Well,
It's a cop-out,
I know.
Salo, because the legal immigration deal is a joke.
But Trump is not saying, he's saying the same thing, Dad. I mean, Trump is just saying stop the border, stop the illegal immigration. He's not saying stop all
No, but
immigration.
Trump actually did something more. Trump actually, he had his agencies delve into how we're regulating legal immigration. And they actually narrowed that funnel as well.
Gotcha.
Because there's a lot of kickbacks in the system. The kinds of countries that we pick and choose from, in many cases, were actually the wrong countries. This is the point. And there's money involved. I know everybody's shocked. And there's a lot of untoward activity. And Trump actually employed agencies to look into that. And he was very serious about it. Yeah, Trump will say, yeah, I believe in legal immigration. But then what he actually did was he actually refined that process. I don't know that Vivek has said anything. In fact, I would argue that he hasn't, because I mean I've tried to research that pretty thoroughly in terms of his positions on that.
When you say about Vivek that he talks in generalities, would you say or accept that because where he's at the moment, he's got to talk in generalities because he's not doing anything at the moment?
I'm just getting back to what you said about how he speaks so clearly. I mean, he speaks so clearly about
but
a lot
in
of
all
unclear
fairness,
stuff.
What details does Trump get into? I mean, the person that gets in the most details, I mean, from what I've seen is DeSantis. I mean, he gets pretty detailed on things, on policy stuff.
Okay, well, first of all, at the last rally, Trump delved into policy. I mean, I would encourage people to go and listen to some of these rallies. He goes off topic. It's Trump. Trump goes off topic, and to use Bill O'Reilly's word, he bloviates. No question about it. That's part of the allure. Look, it's the thing that really attracts you to Trump or really pisses you off about Trump. I mean, depending on what camp you're in. But Trump's rallies have been delving into policy. He's been very clear about that, particularly in matters of education. Thank God, because we've been talking about, I've always used to ask rhetorically, name one national political figure that's actually making education a sort of front issue. And I think Trump is increasingly more and more vocal about that. I'm much less impressed about all the policy stuff that Ron DeSantis has put out, because if you take what Trump's been talking about forever and what DeSantis is talking about, you're going to see a mirror image. DeSantis isn't really bringing anything to the table in terms of policy that Trump hasn't already talked about. And so I think his greatest issue right now is that he's boring Trump. And who wants boring Trump? Let's take the real deal if we're going to end up with Trump. I realize that I'm probably reducing DeSantis a little too much, because I think the man has a lot of substance. I do think Ron DeSantis is an perhaps the most effective governor that we have had in decades. And I don't think that's an overstatement. And I think the American people, weirdly, Nico, are telling DeSantis continue to be an amazing governor. Go the hell back to Florida.
You know, Jeff was saying stuff in our text message, about him being weird and weird moments.
Awkward,
whatever it is.
Different.
It's just interesting.
Interesting.
But the
interesting.
I just think he's out of his, he's not comfortable in his national skin.
I think you're right.
It's like Marco Rubio back then. I'm like,
yes,
you're nice, but not right now,
That's
bro.
kind of a good example. That's a really good example. So I think it's a good example. I've seen a lot of people that when you talk to them privately, they're engaging, they're dynamic,
totally.
they're comfortable, and you've seen this by filming so many people. And then they get in front of any group amount of people, and they're awkward and they're weird and they walk weird. Watch people walk in front of people. People don't know how to walk in public.
That's so true.
Watch people walk on a stage. How they walk weird and they're all robot. They kind of
leg is next.
They don't know what's going on, and people are watching them. And their ass, all of a sudden, someone has an iron on their ass, and they're walking weird. I mean, it's a weird deal.
And how do they shake hands?
And shake
When there's a
hands,
lot of
eye
people?
contact,
Yeah, very different.
and then they think they're funny and they're awkward and they say a stupid joke and then they're just not comfortable in that arena.
And the way they hold their beer in front of a lot of people.
Well, whatever. Yeah, I'm just
something like that,
everything is just awkward. And so I just think because it doesn't make sense to me how he can be extremely comfortable in front of cameras, off the cuff, getting people to calm down, responding and debating back and forth with media people, and then how he's so effective on the state stage. And then because it should be a natural transition if you're really comfortable with it. And he just hasn't done it nationally. So look, it's legitimate criticism. I don't understand it. I just don't. I mean, I haven't looked into it
And
enough,
I think
but
that's
I know
a
it's real.
gift. Again, it's my perspective, but I think that's a gift that Trump has. He can. I mean, he can be pretty nimble on stage.
Yeah.
And Trump brings a huge asset right now, and I think Nico's on board with this, maybe not, but I mean, he's got 4 years of conduct. He's got a 4-year record, and really the first 3 years were, in my view, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I think his last year was less impressive, bogged down by the COVID hysteria and some of the shitty decisions that he
to
made,
stop a
frankly,
lot of
with
things.
regard to COVID
Yeah.
policy.
You should see this, George, and I was going to send it to you guys because I did watch. I chipped away at this one. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I've watched clips of Patrick Bet David talking to that guy Cenk or whatever his name is from the Young Turks.
Goodness.
That was an interesting. Look, that guy, he won me over just in the way he conducted himself. I think he gave PBD's crew the run for their money.
Yeah.
He's very well informed.
This was the second time he did it.
I know it was the
He
second
came
time.
back.
He came back strong.
Yeah, he sharpened his knives.
He
Yeah.
sure did,
Yeah.
man. I mean, I think from the few things that I've seen, if I'm analyzing it not on substance, on presentation, he won. My opinion. I mean, just on the couple, I haven't seen the whole.
Yeah.
I don't have 2 hours. I got to chip away at stuff.
He yells a lot.
But not as I didn't see as much on this one. I just thought he was more. He was very poised. He had a lot of information. I didn't fact check his information, but that kind of stuff's important. We have to know what we believe in, be able to articulate it well, and have these discussions. I thought it was interesting that he was on there. So for me, I'm sorry for that little side note. I just wanted to. I encourage people to watch it. I'm going to watch the whole thing also. I wished. Man, Trump is a mixed bag for me, man.
Yeah.
Look, on this issue,
he's just
you can
a
either
mixed
say that's
bag
a
for me.
strength or a weakness.
Golly,
This is an
man.
important point. I want to continue to elaborate on that.
Please.
Trump doesn't talk policy like Marco Rubio.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, he doesn't talk like Vivek.
No.
Trump talks policy like he would be sitting in a New York pizzeria, biting down on a pepperoni slice.
Yeah.
You know, he'd be talking casually.
But isn't that what the American
Okay,
people understand?
Exactly.
That's,
He knows that.
That's the asset.
Well,
Yeah.
half of
And
them don't.
this is why I think he continues to get unbelievable amounts of support with every bit with every indictment that he gets.
I was talking to,
Because the American people, as we've said in here before, and I'm going to keep drilling it, is that they're associating themselves with Trump. They're seeing themselves in Trump. They're looking at this latest indictment, and they're seeing a special counsel indict a former president of the United States for constitutional, I would argue, constitutional legalities that every American enjoys. Trump is being indicted for coming out and saying the 2020 election was stolen. We were ripped off by the current fraudulent president and his minions. Trump had came out swinging, and he used basically that language. And Jack Smith's indictment basically goes after him for that.
Yeah.
And he's using conspiratorial language. He uses co-conspirator language in the indictment.
There's unindicted co-conspirators.
Indeed, indeed. And then he goes after this really, I think, spurious notion that Trump tried to galvanize Republican-held legislatures to submit competing slates of electoral college electors. Think about that. There's nothing illegal about it.
No.
Democrats have done that.
Yeah.
In fact, if you go back to elections, you'll see it.
Yeah.
1969, 2001, 2005, 2017. Go back to 1963 between the Nixon-Kennedy election. Kennedy had an alternate because it was a really close election. And Kennedy had an alternate slate of electors. How does this work? You contest an election. It may go through the court system. If the court system found that there's something about the election that makes it illegit, you need to have a board, a slate of electors on standby that then are certified. If in fact the court system finds that in fact there was, now that never happened with Trump, as we know, for lots of reasons, separate discussion. But let's assume a court, or let's assume even the Supreme Court would have found that to be the case. It would have been totally appropriate, and nothing controversial. I shouldn't say that. It would have been controversial, but it would have been nothing illegal to have an alternate state of electors ready to go. This has been going on forever. So basically, Jack Smith is trying to indict Trump for doing something that not only every American constitutionally enjoys doing, but if in fact Trump goes to prison for it, then every fucking politician on the Hill better go to prison too.
Yeah.
And Nico's made this point in here. I mean, Hillary Clinton, right?
Stacey Abrams,
Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer. Stacey Abrams made a career of it, going around the country basically trying to call in question the Georgia election. This whole thing is nuts. People are associating themselves with Trump. They're right there with Trump. Every time the man is indicted, his numbers go up.
Yeah.
And people donate. Look, I'll admit, I donated.
Yeah.
I was so fucking pissed off, but I donated.
But yeah, I mean, again, they go up in the primary or in the general, likely general electors, independents, Democrats. I don't know. So
We can talk general polling.
Yeah, again,
general election polling.
Let's see. The finish line is the finish line. Look, this indictment is concerning because it prosecutes constitutionally protected speech. You're entitled to be wrong. When you use the word defraud, I mean that the Supreme Court is at least in recent times has defined that to be pecuniary interest, either property or money. We have this defraud them out of their right to vote. Then can the counter argument be made that when Biden promised to absolve your debt, your student loan debt, he knew he couldn't do that. He was told it was unconstitutional, but he promised it anyway. Did he defraud people out of votes too? I don't know. I mean, where does it go? I guess what I always say is be careful the world you help create because someday you have to live in it.
Yes.
This is why you can't have this win at all costs. These are novel legal theories. Once again, we're getting to novelty again.
But elaborate on the only way this would stick legally, Nico. Trump would have had to believe that what he's saying.
That's different. See, yes.
Wrong.
He would have to, cause what the indictment seems to have is these co-conspirators and then all these people that told him they were, okay, so I don't think it's going to be in question that X amount of people told him he lost.
Absolutely.
But you have to prove that he believed it, that he says, I know I lost, but I'm still going to do this to change the result of the election and to not to let the peaceful transfer of power.
That's true.
I mean, I don't know how they get there. And then how do you, I'm thinking as a litigator, how are you going to prove that up? Yeah. You're going to relitigate. You're going to relitigate all the election defrauding stuff. And I mean, you're going to relitigate this in 7 different states or whatever it is. I mean, I just think that I think this is going to be, there's no way this is going to trial. I shouldn't say no way because there's a judge that has to be appealed.
And again, we're not in the world of reasoning.
Josh Hammer wrote a piece in Town Hall, and there's a portion of that piece that I think gets at the heart of what we're saying here. He said, if Trump earnestly believed the 2020 election was stolen due to rampant fraud, then his attempts to direct his Department of Justice to work with the afflicted states to submit for consideration alternative slates of electors was justifiable. In fact, if he truly, and I think this is a breathtaking statement, I'd like you to weigh in on it.
Oh.
In fact, if Trump subjectively believed that fraud on that great of a scale had occurred, one could plausibly argue his constitutional oath of office required such actions.
But how could he think it happened to that degree that fast? That would be my counter argument. How would he come to that strong position that quickly without
And
an
this is
investigation?
why Trump's lawyers have come out and said, I'm so glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
Because they're now, thank you for giving us the opportunity to litigate the entire 2020
Exactly.
election.
I know, but
and
what-
that's
what
one of
I'm
the
saying-
questions that's going to be answered.
Right. But I'm saying, how did you get there that fast?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
No, but is the defense going to be that he had all these people rushed, that they had all this data and analysis that quickly?
No, I'm saying
mean,
that it's
no,
going
no,
to
there was-
give him permission.
No,
but
it's
if you're trying to get into his mind, you're going to have to argue that he believed it to that
Yes.
degree at that moment that quickly.
Mr. Trump, when did you first start believing this? Well, that's real easy.
Let's go through.
I'm hauling
Yeah.
ass on election night across the board.
That is so
I'm
true.
up 700 to 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania.
Totally. Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
They shut it down.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Bring me the numbers.
Literally all of a
Let's see
sudden.
the numbers. Let's see this guy.
Yeah.
Totally.
I want to know, just curious, I want to know why I'm called the loser with less than 1% of the vote in Arizona. On what basis?
Yeah.
By a major network.
Yeah.
I guess confirmation bias doesn't affect people. Of course it does, right? I want to know what happened in Georgia. What's with those mysterious plumbing problems
Yeah.
at ballot counting centers? Why shutting them down? By the way, I'm ahead in all of them. But then the next day,
you're making the point. Then you're making the point
That's where it
that
started.
he had this surface level questions that were have to have answers to, but he had not delved down into it to be able to answer the questions. Can you prove? Because the
you
response
use
to
the
that
word
is
data. And I'm saying Trump's sitting there watching the votes come in.
We all
Look,
are.
You're the only one in this
Yeah.
room with
That's-
experience doing that.
no, I know, but
So,
that's correlation, not causation, right?
I'm with you.
I'm just making sure that we're consistent.
I'm with you, but I'm getting back, and I realize it's a totally different context. Reasonable and apparent, or imminent and apparent reasonable belief. Those words matter here too, I think. Trump had a reasonable belief that something amiss was going on. He had, there's reasonable doubt. That's because he's
You're not
looking
saying
at
he
the
was
data.
100% sure, but he had enough to move forward.
Exactly right.
Okay, that's a different position.
But that's
okay.
a different galaxy.
Right.
Then he knew
right.
that what he was saying was
But
fraudulent.
no matter what,
or
I just
wrong.
don't see how they're gonna come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
Are they gonna be able to prove that he knew he was wrong? Yes, okay, Bill Barr told him this, or so and so told him this. I don't know unless they have some co-conspirator that's gonna say, I told him he lost, and he says, I know I did, but there's no way we can leave. That's going to be different.
I
Now,
love
whether
it.
that's corroborated or not, it's another story.
I was going to read Josh Hammer's next point, but that's exactly what he just
Oh,
said.
I know.
He says Smith's move to get around this, to argue based on nothing more than secondhand remarks, that Trump subjectively knew the 2020 election was not in fact stolen. No matter how many different names of lawyers Smith trots out who apparently told Trump that he in fact lost the election, it will be near impossible for Smith to prove that Trump actually deep down knew he lost. And I think this is interesting. It is entirely possible, for instance, that for every 99 people in his orbit who told him he lost, Trump chose to believe the one person who told him that he had really won.
But it's not that he chose to believe them; he really believed it. That's the defense.
And that's where his
That's
actions
their
are going to
defense,
come in.
yeah.
All of Trump's actions will show that he genuinely believed it. I mean, he was persistent. Talk about the tenacity of a weed. Trump did not let up. He had lawyer after lawyer filing suit after suit after suit. Unfortunately, those suits were filed after the fact, and the court system is just inherently weak-kneed when it comes to taking up post-election, anti-election result charges or suits. Unfortunately, I wish Trump had been a little bit more proactive.
Hey guys,
ahead
first of all,
time.
I want to thank everybody that's watching either on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. Thank you for following. I want to thank, Joey Catalina just made a contribution to Sidebar.
Thanks, Joey.
So by
Joey,
doing
thank
that,
you, brother.
Joey, thank you very much. By doing that, you're telling Nico and George that, to continue this. And we want to thank you because, like Nico says all the time, there's not a lot of programs like this out there. You know what I mean? It's to a certain degree it's one-sided, the opinions and conversations about what's going on in this world. So we thank God for Sidebar, and thank you for Joey Catalina for, being part of this.
Yeah, no, we obviously all this takes money, right? I mean, so we appreciate people doing that, and we definitely would, we'll go wherever we need to go, whether we stay to the audience that we have now, or we get to a bigger audience as the Lord leads, as we say. I love having conversation. I like to peel the onion back, as I like to say often. I like to get to the principles supporting a position, because a position might be unfounded.
Nico, so let me ask you a question. If there's somebody listening or somebody here that's watching and listening says, I know somebody that can give you a counterpoint to what you guys are saying, would these microphones be open to them?
Well, not just anybody, right?
No,
you gotta be careful.
Carmen?
Yeah. Fulano. Look, I mean, there's people that I would like to ask on here that have a different position. If someone wants to recommend somebody, we definitely would be open to that. I think that'd be more for the after show, maybe for the look. We're open to take the show wherever it needs to go. This is commentary. It's it's analysis like any other, like there's other shows, but that's why those long form programs do well, because it lets you flush out ideas, and I think it's important to have that. I think people are seeing that, and they're wanting more of it, because you want to see an opposing side. Because how do you know your position's right unless you test it against someone else's side? And that's why I thought this last exchange between Patrick and Patrick Bet David and Jenk, I think his name. Yeah. I thought now they've intrigued me to go back and watch the whole thing now.
Did you see the one with Wiener?
I actually did. That guy's a prick, man.
Yeah, that's embarrassing.
That was really embarrassing for that dude.
On your just immediately previous point, I would love the opportunity to entertain counterpoints. Would love it. Just a warning though, just a friendly warning. We read CNN. Mm-hmm. We read MSNBC.
Yeah.
And I know Nico, because he said it up front. Mm-hmm. He said, anticipate the counterpoint. 'Cause that's how you're wired. I do the same thing. I want to know what the opposition is saying.
Yeah.
I want to know their best and most solid arguments. Yeah. And so when we come on the show, we know what the other side is saying. And we don't have time here to go through all of that.
Yeah.
But we try to present what we think are the best arguments in favor of the truth, because we don't have a lot of time. I mean, it's not like we have 3 hours every day, to be able to go through the counterpoints one by one.
Look at what David says. This has been an excellent show, and would love to expand on the radio. I do not think you need a counterpoint, as Nico does well at explaining why there are various ways to look at topics. Know your enemies. Patty says, know your enemies. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. That's what she says.
Well, look, we still have to live together, man. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I was responsible as the district attorney to run an office that had 500 employees, and there were all kinds of people in there. I mean, different beliefs, atheist, Islamic, LGBT, you name it, Christian, non-Christian, whatever it was. And we had to work together to accomplish a goal to ensure justice was done for the community of Bexar County. And we had this oath to make sure that we got it right in the end, do the best we can to work with people and work with the 46, 47 law enforcement agencies. And so in the end, we had to work together to reach, what's the goal of America? To thrive, to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, right? Not happiness meaning your feelings, meaning property ownership, education, entrepreneurship, freedom to worship, freedom to think the way you want to think, and freedom to share your thoughts. We got to preserve that and to pursue truth. And we've just gotten so far away from what we think is best for people, what's best for your children. We've gotten so far away from that, and we're on opposite sides of the football field, and that's dangerous for us. And that's why I think, to George's point about the illegal immigration, if we don't know what we believe as a country, then I mean, this is a free for all. Yeah. I mean, we don't know we're assimilating to. We don't know what is the American way. By the way, if you ask a kid what's the American way, what are they going to say? To choose your gender? That's really turned into the American way. Say? I mean, right. I mean, what's the American way? To pursue liberty, to pursue freedom, to pursue happiness, and to dream big, to pursue it, to have opportunity, right? Equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. That's a big deal. And then now we've shifted that also. We don't know. Again, I can't get back. I can never get away from this.
Yeah.
When you look at our money, in 1956, we put on our money in God we trust. That was a culture. That was the way we did things. That was an ideology that we believed in these rights, inalienable rights endowed to us by a transcendent creator that, regardless if you believe, we believe the government and give them to us. We go from 1956 to, well, it's been 70 years, but it happened way before 70 years. Now you can't even pray in a football field voluntarily.
And this
is insane.
It's an entirely different America. we now have a country where a citizen's dissenting voice against the government narrative is persecuted. That's the country. I mean, it's a diametric switch from the way we started this nation, and we got to fight to get it back. And the voters are the answer, really, politically. This is the only lever of power that we have right now. We are not playing on a level field right now. We have a situation where the great balance of power, which is really meant to be the Department of Justice. Our justice system is meant to put everybody on a level playing field. And now the Department of Justice is operating as this president's personal legal arm of enforcement against our country. That's what's happening right now. I mean, they're the legal arm of basically, the brown shirts, because these people do not hesitate to resort to violence. We've seen it. They don't hesitate to do that. To whom will we appeal? I mean, if our justice system is compromised, to whom will American citizens appeal? What do we have left? And so this is becoming more and more normalized. And I'm worried we're getting to a point of no return. Barring the 24 election, I don't know how we get back to normalcy. I think the Trump statement should be interpreted in that context, wanting to get the country back to constitutional order when he said, in 2024, it'll be our turn.
Yeah, but he didn't. I mean,
he should have clarified exactly what he means.
My point is this to the critics out there. I'm not going to defend Trump in the sense of let him defend himself. I'm gonna say, look, I'm just gonna call balls and strikes. Not that George is not. He needs to defend that statement. I think he does, in my humble opinion, because we don't want this perpetual, Royal Rumble. King of the mountain position, Karen. This is not sustainable long term. It's just not. And we got to get back to we don't know. The church has dropped the ball. Parents overall have dropped the ball. We're afraid to talk about topics. The advice given as people our age grew up, don't talk about politics or religion in public, was shitty advice, in my humble opinion. We got to be able to talk about worldview and advocacy. Yep. What are you advocating? What are you trying to persuade me? Because there's people, George, people of tremendous substance that I respect a lot, and that are not think completely different than us. They'll look at the same set of facts. They think Trump was the worst president ever. And these are people that I value their opinion. These are people that I love. These are people that I either work with or whatever, and that I trust in many areas of my life. And they have a completely different, and that's fascinating to me. It comes down to the lens that we look in our analysis.
Absolutely.
It really comes down to that.
Set up a lunch. I'd love to spend 30 minutes talking to him about what this type of government means, and what this ultimately leads to. As someone who's lived,
I was just going to say
through
that.
It,
yeah,
I'd love to be able to talk to him about that. I'm happy to point out step by step where this is going to go, if there isn't, in fact, some sort of pushback from the voters, and I mean substantial pushback from the voters in 2024. And I'm praying that that's, in fact, what ends up happening.
And then here's the deal. I think you have some people that are not as left or as progressive as where the Democrat Party has gone, but they don't feel like they belong in the Republican Party or whatever, or Libertarian Party. And 'cause I know a lot of people that are quote unquote vote Democrat, but and they passionately disagree with. Look. Let's just look at Bill Maher. He's always criticizing the left, but he says, "Oh, I'm voting for Joe Biden no matter what." If you listen to your criticism, Bill, if I didn't know you from Adam, I would think that you're not going to vote that way because you're criticizing the hell out of it. But he criticizes the right. Don't get me wrong, a lot too. But it's interesting. I think there's a lot of displaced people that find themselves not knowing where to go, and then I'm always fascinated by listening to their analysis and their evaluation of why they end up voting where they do.
Well, just because it's Trump, they don't want to switch over. But if you look at your surroundings and how we're having to live, shouldn't that be reason enough?
You know, it would be an interesting discussion with a lot of the people like this is if you present a conversation and a set of ideas to them, and then I've talked a lot of people over, like, man, maybe I'm more conservative than I think, and just through reason and just through facts. But it's the Trump factor.
Yeah.
So as much as people love him, this is why I've told this to George and Sal in the past, as some people, that Trump factor is real.
Yeah.
The Trump factor is real, and the people that say, yes, I'm with him no matter what, which is kind of good and bad, I guess. I mean, but there's some people that are against them no matter what too. And on a net, what does it do? Look, I don't know what the number is of the president that's ever won the most percentage wise. Most presidents usually win by 2 to 4% or whatever the stat is, or 5%. Nobody landslides a national election. You always have a divided, and that's the true balance of a country. Is you have this push and pull and this balance and this ebb and flow and yin and yang type situation. So I mean, but you're playing for those 2 to 5% in the middle. That's why it matters so much. And there's people that are just, I agree with you, but it's because it's Trump. It's like, man, but why are you going to spite your nose or your face for your nose or whatever that is?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I'm a net person. I don't care if I like the doctor or not. If I think that doctor is going to help, a surgeon is going to help my child, I'm all in. I don't care if I don't like your firefighter. You got my kids in the burning building, and you know how to deal with fire and explosions. Go get them.
And Nico, that's where I'm at. That's the only area I talk to when people talk about Trump. I tell them, okay, let's talk policy. Because then they immediately start talking emotionally.
Personality.
I don't like this. I don't like this. Let's go back to policy. What policies of the Democratic Party right now that you're seeing and the Republican Party? Because I hate identifying as a Republican or Democrat. I'm like, let's talk about policy and let's vote on that. But do you think that sometimes you go that route? That you're like, man, because sometimes when I hear our conversations, we start talking more about how he did things than what he's doing.
Yeah, no, but to me, I'm so deep, and I mean this humbly. I'm not trying. I mean, I get deep under the hood anyway. So to me, the how he does things, I'm thinking of the net result.
Gotcha.
It's like a trial.
Yeah.
Well, you're also thinking of the audience.
Well,
Trump's audience is the American voter.
Yeah.
How are they going to?
If you have evidence that's going to help and you have evidence of actual innocence, or if you're a prosecutor, evidence of actual guilt, but you present it horribly, you can turn off a jury. That's called jury nullification, where the jury nullifies all your evidence, even though it's in your favor. And so maybe I admit, maybe I'm too much of a trial lawyer, and I'm thinking of all the factors, the intangibles, and the nuanced things in the presentation and the perception, because perception is reality.
Gotcha.
And there's so many people that when you start talking to them about their perception of Trump, like, oh, really? Yes. Or whatever the issue is.
Yeah.
And context
I try to remove the emotional part, and let's talk about policy. Valerie says, if someone told me that they would vote for Biden no matter what, I tell them then you would go to a 5-year-old for brain surgery because he's not conscious. Anyway, Ray, time to have Sidebar at a venue where you can have an audience.
I agree with that.
That is an amazing idea,
I totally
Ray.
agree with that.
And somebody was asking about how to donate to Sidebar. Thank you very much. You can go to sidebartv.com. There you'll find how to access us through Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And somebody said, yes, Facebook sucks. Yes, it sucks. So if you're watching on Facebook, go to YouTube and go to TikTok or go to Twitter and help share with other people. And thank you for donating.
Yeah, well, the good topics. We'll reconvene next week. Who knows what the hell is going to happen this week to talk about next week. But
another day, another indictment.
Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. Yeah. And guys, please share this with someone you think will benefit from it. Look, I mean, our goal is, I want younger people. We got to get all of us. I mean, I don't know who's watching. I don't do the stats. But all I'm saying is every time I get to an audience, I said, where are the young folks? Where's the next generation? We have to make an attempt to sit and talk with them and reason with them. And there's a counter argument is that the young people aren't reasonable. Okay, well, if you say that, then you're never going to reach them. You got to try to sit down with them and talk with them and find out where they're at. Do a little listening. It's the voir dire, the jury selection, is you find out what the audience, what the veneer panel's thinking before you try to persuade them on your position and what the law is. And so I just try to reason with people. We got to reach our next generation. For me, for us, as biblically minded people, we think eternally, but we live generationally because it's about the next generation.
Vinny says venue, Sidebar, town hall. He says, I'll bring the tacos.
Well, you're my designated taco eater.
Taco hunter.
Well, guys, God bless you. Enjoy the weekend and share this with someone you think might benefit from it. Thank you.